Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is our Saline City Council work meeting for Monday, September 8th at 6 p.m. I call to order the roll call. Members present, Mr. Gearbaugh, Mr. CO, Ms. Rice, Mr. Lesh, Ms. Harmount, myself, Mayor Morrow, will be absent from staff. We have, I'm not sure your title, Ms. Cole, Deputy City Manager Cole, Clerk Royal, City Manager Swallow, don't have everybody listed, apologize, and DPW Director Hapala. So now moving on, we need a motion to approve the agenda, either as submitted or amended.
Move to approve as submitted.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Rice, seconded by Harmount. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The only absence that we will have is Mayor Morrow. Do we have a motion to excuse his absence? Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was really everybody. Okay, we'll go with Mr. Lesh and Mr. CO as the second on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving through the agenda, public comments. Under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time and make a comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state their name for the record. Is there any public comment? None in the gallery. Clerk Royal, did we receive any? So no public comment. So moving right along to discussion, we have one and only discussion topic is the subcommittee process. And Councilmember Harmount is going to be presenting to us. There should have been a few documents at your place at the dais that I think is going to mirror what she's showing on the screens. And I think what we'll do is let you go through your process for a few minutes, and then we'll kind of pause and go with questions.
Sounds great.
Okay. Floor is yours.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm presenting out on a new subcommittee process that I created, and just want to go over the agenda. So first, talk about the background.
Can you stand in front of the microphone?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'll back up here for a second. Anyway, my name's Jen Harmount. I'm City Council Member Jen Harmount. I created a subcommittee process that I'm presenting out on this evening as a recommendation for adopting. So for the agenda, we're going to talk about the background. I'm going to reflect on the Social Gathering Space Subcommittee, and then review the process flow that was created. And as you can see, there's 4 different steps that we're going to review, including defining scope, identifying stakeholders, establishing criteria, getting stakeholder feedback, evaluating options, and the recommendation. A little bit of background. So a little bit about myself. I'm new to City Council. I joined in January of 2024. What I do for a living, I work for a major automotive, and I specialize in procurement strategy, project management, and I have a lot of experience in process mapping, and that came into play with this when I looked at this. So one of the challenges of subcommittee is on both ends. So one thing I realized once I joined City Council is that sometimes it's hard that we have to vote on things, and sometimes it's coming out of a subcommittee. We're not always familiar with all of the different criteria, decision making, or steps that went into coming up with that recommendation. That's always a challenge if you're on the receiving end of that. Also, I was tasked with being on a subcommittee task force, and one thing I realized is that we didn't really have a standard process for how we approach subcommittees, and we had a lot of learning points and rework, and so I thought that there could be some more a more standardized process with that, and with standardized process comes more standardized results. And so again, many subcommittee recommendations could benefit from more concrete data and clear reasoning, which would help ensure for more confident decisions on proposals and budgets, a more transparent process for outlining quantifiable criteria in subcommittee reports, and that's going to help foster clarity and trust among city council members, and so to avoid any discord on the dais. Establishing well-defined evaluation measures could also strengthen confidence in the integrity of the decision-making, and having a structure of more standard process will drive more consistent results and provide a roadmap for reflection. So, one of the opportunities, as I mentioned, that I was on this Saline Social Gathering Space Subcommittee, and there were a couple observations. So, first of all, it was a great subcommittee. I really appreciated everyone that was on the subcommittee that worked to get the social gathering space approved. The observations were, we did have a couple learning curves here, and the focus shifted from a downtown gathering space, so the scope didn't stay fixed, and so that kind of was a moving target, and that altering discussions. The evaluation criteria could have been a little bit more measurable up front, so we had a little bit of back and forth of that. And then the early stakeholder input was missing, and we had to go back and collect some of that. So there were some little bit of learning curves that could have been a little bit more efficient. So areas of improvement on this reflection is that there was opportunity to define the scope and the terminology clearly. So focus on attributes, not ownership, and set measurable criteria early. So again, engaging stakeholders sooner, and who we're talking about when we say stakeholders is the folks that are impacted by whatever the decision that we're making. And just to back up here, when we talk about subcommittees, we're not here to discuss whether or not we agree or don't agree with subcommittees or who is on the subcommittees. This is really about the process of how the subcommittee is conducted and to lead to a more standardized recommendation is what that is. So again, next steps for a more efficient process. So this made it clear to me that there was maybe some opportunity to have a clear scope and terminology from the beginning, a standardized material and handouts and report out material that could be a little bit more upfront in improve stakeholder engagement, excuse me, and meeting structure. So the goal really is to build a transparent, efficient process using a standardized framework and with clear scope, metrics, and inclusive input. So in plain words, what does that mean? So what it means is that we want to be clear from the start about what we're planning. We want to use simple, consistent words so that everyone is on the same page, and we want to focus on what matters. So again, when we're talking about criteria, it's what matters, and it could be making a decision between 3 different options or more than one option. It could be making a decision to go or not go, or do or not do. It could be making a decision between personnel for hiring. So this could be this could be used for different uses, but for my focus, this is for subcommittee report out recommendations. Okay, so I have a handout, and there's a lot of words, and we're not going to go over all the words, but I do want to show it in its entirety, that it's pretty substantial. It's broken out into meetings. So the idea is that there's a step 1. The first meeting is to define the scope. And so we're going to get into that a little bit into the different steps. But the meeting minutes, so the idea also after each one of these meetings, there's going to be a more standardized report out for the city council member that's part of the subcommittee to report out on the status of the subcommittee. Okay, so step 1 is defining the scope in the stakeholder identification process. So the idea is that the mayor obviously is the one that sets the criteria for the subcommittee, and then we have established a subcommittee. So there's a request for a project, we're establishing the scope of the subcommittee, assignments are provided, again, the city council and the mayor appoint who's going to be on that subcommittee, and then directs the staff with the city manager, directs the staff to schedule the committee meeting. And then we move forward with pre-scheduling the meeting, and then we have our first meeting. So the first meeting really is, again, to define the scope and to identify who are the folks that we need to get feedback on this. Okay, so we have a handout for step 1, defining the scope of considerations. And again, this is not to be all-inclusive, the end-all, be-all, but this is to provide a framework for us to be able to work off of moving forward. So for the step one is defining the scope. So one thing that's really important is the project name. So one of the struggles that we had, again, that was with the name. The name of the subcommittee was originally set up as a social gathering space, and the scope was to identify the correct location for the social gathering space. And then we did notice that we had some changing of the scope name. So we talked about the green space, and we had some different things that was referred to. So I thought that was a good reflection to referring to the project name should be defined to define the objective. So be consistently used and reflects a non-bias. Objective is clearly states what the project aims to accomplish. For example, is it focused on community development, infrastructure enhancement, or technology upgrades? So what are going to be the deliverables? So specify the outcome of what we're going to produce at the end of the subcommittee. These could include reports, designs, constructed facilities, implemented systems, etc. So stakeholders, who is this going to impact? Who do we need to get our feedback from? And this is something that we can build on. We can have a list of stakeholders, and so then we have another subcommittee we can build on this and drive so that it's more efficient. Every time we have a subcommittee meeting, it's more efficient because it's something that's consistent that we're building on. So a timeline, set the deadlines for each phase with the milestones, including initiation plan, execution, and completion. Identify any constraints, highlight any limitations such as budget restrictions, legal considerations, or resource availability. Specify what cannot be included in the project to avoid scope creep or miscommunication. Resource, outline the human, financial, and material resources required. And that can also include not just upfront costs, but maintenance costs as well. And then again, the approval process. Define decision-making stages, including reviews by the committee, managers, and council. So who do we need to get feedback along the way? So I'm going to stop there and take questions at this point. So does anybody have any questions to this point? Yes, Jack.
Jen, on the outset here, you said focus on the, I'm sorry, let me flip back to page, and I'll quote you.
Did you need me to review a slide from the presentation? Because those are handy.
Focus on the objective and not the personalities of people involved.
Attributes, not ownership.
Yeah, so we're looking on the data as opposed to the person, or so we're referring to it in a non-biased stance. So when we're talking about a property, we're not necessarily, it's the property, not who owns the property, or, you know, when we're referring to the name of the project or the name of the location.
Okay. But wouldn't, in some cases, wouldn't the ownership matter and how you conduct it?
Yes, but as it relates to, it is one of the criteria as far as risk mitigation or with regards to stakeholder feedback. But when we're discussing like a location, it should be like the address, or, you know, to keep it consistent.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Other questions at this time? Jen, to be mindful of time, why don't you just continue through so that we can make sure we get through the entire presentation?
Absolutely. Okay, so step number 2 is, again, criteria setting and stakeholder feedback. So this part would be perhaps the second meeting. So again, if the first step takes more than one meeting, so be it, but this is a progression. So the second meeting is the criteria setting. So we're defining the scope of the project, we're developing critical criteria and define measurement of each criteria for the judgment. And then we're listing out the criteria. So what matters about this? And I'll give a good example. We're in our household looking to do spring break. And so when we're talking about criteria for a vacation, again, we can use a decision matrix or a criteria matrix for anything that you're looking at. But it's what matters. So what is important about this project, or for us, you know, for the example that people can understand, we're looking for a spring break spot. What are some of the things that we're considering? We're considering cost, we're considering location, we're considering travel time, the different things that we're considering. And different things might have different amount of weighting. So that's really important as far as what is important to the project, and really brainstorming together in the subcommittee along with feedback from the stakeholders that we're going to identify to make sure we're covering all the bases of what's important to the committee and for the project. So again, we're going to assign follow-up items. So if we're going to, there's going to be some items we need to follow up on, and so we're going to be assigning the task for follow-up, and we're going to be collecting the data from the stakeholders, and then and feeding that back into the next step, which is the next meeting. Okay. So I provided a handout, just an example of the criteria setting process. Again, we did, we piloted this on the fly for the social gathering space subcommittee, and we use, one of the things that's really important is that it is measurable. And so that was one of the thing that we struggled with. We had to go back and define like what's measurable. So obviously if you're talking about cost, the measurement is dollars. If you're talking about you know, if you're talking about time, it's, you know, number of days or months, you know, but what it shouldn't be is it's really good or it's really, really good. It should be, you know, if it's walkable, define walkable. And, you know, for this particular project, one of the criteria was to make sure that we didn't eliminate parking spaces, because parking was at a premium. So when we're looking at our criteria, one of them that we weighted was parking spaces and whether or not how many they were detracting from. And so when we set our criteria, the benchmark was what was the most favorable condition. So we go from, you know, the least favorable to most favorable. So whatever the benchmark is for the best, then it's, you know, it deviated, or it's distributed from there. And clearly measurable. Okay. Then we get into step 3, and if you look at that, that's, you know, that can be the 3rd meeting. Again, it might take a couple, you might have to have a repeat meeting along the way, but it's just to be moving it forward. So the evaluation is really just looking at the options. So we're not coming up with a desired outcome and then filling in the data. We're letting the data drive the decision. So just like if you're looking at anything, it's a scoring base. So we're looking at what is the option based on the criteria and the weighting that we set that has the most points, and then that is the recommendation. So we have that, and we're evaluating each of the options to the criteria that we set and looking at the outcome. And then we're coming up with a summary, because we're going to need to provide that summarized to the city council members for a recommendation. And again, like in my work, it's a circle is the preferred optimal outcome. A triangle is like, it's not all the way there, but it could be, we could get it there. And an X is it's not feasible or it's not acceptable. And so that's going to go into a overall recommendation. So we've evaluated, so again, we set the scope, we define the scope, we've gotten feedback from stakeholders, you know, we've set the criteria, we've evaluated the criteria, and now we're going to make a recommendation to the folks on city council. And so we're going to do that in a maybe more defined, summarized manner, and I've just provided just a format. It doesn't need to be this format, but it's just something that I put together. In my work, if it's not written, it's not a process. And so I think this is just the start. It's not to have to be in stone. It doesn't mean that it doesn't get changed. It can be changed. But again, if we don't have a process, it's hard to follow a process that we don't have. And having a process just really helps with efficiency. So next time, every time we have a subcommittee meeting, okay, we're going to go through these steps. It's going to be different criteria. It's going to be different stakeholders. It's going to be different options, but the process flow is the same. And we're going to have a more standardized result and recommendation. So, in conclusion, a standardized process for subcommittee report out is a standardized report format presenting subcommittee recommendations for city council action are designed to foster competent voting with minimal rework or debate, because rework and debate costs money and time, and that's both money and time. Structured recommendations, report for city council voting, streamlining decision making and reducing contention. And, subcommittee recommendations in a standardized report format is enhancing the vote, again, voter competency and efficiency. And really, at the end of the day, it's about the efficiencies with our taxpayer money. It's about the transparency with the decisions and the recommendations that are being made. And it's really to help provide a more consistent framework for folks that are newly joining subcommittees, they're taking over a subcommittee. We have to go back and reflect on something that maybe didn't go the way we thought it was going to go. It's hard to do a reflection if you don't have a really good roadmap of how you got there in the first place. So with that, I just would like to, hopefully everybody is accepting of this process and we can move forward in adopting it at a future meeting. Sorry. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you. So we can open it up for questions. We can work down the line. We can just raise hands, whichever we'd like to do. Okay. We'll just start at your end.
The second to last slide here is handout worksheet. I don't know if we were supposed to actually get a handout. Is this what you envision as the thing that council would receive? This handout here?
A summary to go along. Of course, you're always going to have lots of back data, but a summarized recommendation page.
Okay. I think process is great. I mean, I love process. I agree that the last couple of subcommittees that we've had have had different processes. So getting them a little bit more streamlined is fantastic. I don't know that, and I think you agree to this, I don't know that every recommendation can be built around something exactly like this, but we could use elements of it, I think, so that we all kind of get the feel for how this is to go. The one thing I do want to do, though, is because you're using the social gathering space as your example, remind everyone that this was something that came about very quickly, and we had to do it very quickly. Yes. And the subcommittee did change its focus a couple of times. It was originally supposed to be a focus and acting. Now you are, I'm doing the same darn thing. I'm sorry, Deputy Director Cole. I like that better. It sounds good. Correct me if I'm wrong, but our mission originally was to evaluate the MEDC grant in the space and whether or not to make the recommendation to council to approve moving forward on that.
That is correct. It
kind of spiraled into, well, what about all these other studies that we've done? And it got a little bit bigger, the focus did. Which I think is absolutely fine, because it kind of brought us back to, well, we spent all this money on these other things. Let's make sure that we're reevaluating them. So that process is kind of hard to put on the spotlight for this, I think, because that was kind of a wild, wild west at the moment when we were trying to do that. I do feel like that might happen still every now and then. And maybe we need a process that is less cumbersome than this, like taking elements of this and creating a process for when those opportunities arise. Perfect example is we only have a couple of months to look into the purchase of the mansion, right? Can we get through something like this in those couple of months? Maybe we can. Maybe that's the perfect opportunity for something like this. But if we have to make a decision within a couple of weeks about something that literally like a deadline is coming up, I think we need to shrink this down into something a little bit more manageable.
So I totally understand where you're coming from. What I've experienced since I've been on city council is when we don't do the footwork up front, we end up paying for it on the back end with additional meetings or additional. And I think that setting and defining the scope as you talked about, because there was a lot of that was a lot of time that we went back and forth on that, and that it changed. And I think if we would have just had that as our first step, like let's talk about the scope, let's define the scope, and not have moved past that and gotten down the road without actually defining the scope and all agreeing and getting confirmation from the mayor, because the mayor is the one that set the subcommittee, that said we need to find a location for the gathering space. And so I think that was something that if we would have been following the process, that would have been the first step, is making sure that we're all on the same page about what is the scope of the subcommittee.
I just want to reiterate, we did receive that grant. I don't want the community to get bogged down by this example. I'm just saying it out loud. It was something that we'd never experienced before, and we had to work on it in a hasty manner. So please, community, don't think that we did that wrong or that we didn't do our due diligence, because we did. You were just using it as an example of like how we could have done better. Like we could have started with a scope meeting. So
I think that I will say that because we did basically implemented this process on the fly for the folks that were in the subcommittee. We really defined this process as part of that, and it worked. It went great. At the end, I think that we made a recommendation that everybody understood how we got there, and it was a unanimous vote. And I think it was the right decision for sure, because we got the grant money and we're moving forward with that project, and it's what the city needs for a vibrant downtown. So I'm excited about that. Every project we do has a reflection, and there's always continuous improvement. I definitely think that that's the mindset we need to be looking at.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. I just want to make sure that the timing is such that we just announced that we received that grant, and we don't want to, If
I may, I just want to be really clear that we have received the initial letter of intent. That doesn't represent a full approval, just says we're communicating out to the public right now. I just want to reiterate that we've received the initial thumbs up for the letter of intent for the grant, but we have a lot of steps and a lot of things, requirements to meet before we actually are funded with that grant money.
Which a process like this might help with.
And I think it's like anything. If you're a technician and you just did the first like you're installing a widget on a car, the first time you do it, it's going to take all the time to do it, and the second time it's going to take maybe half the time, and the third time so the consistency drives the efficiency.
Okay, that's it for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Yearbach, any questions?
Questions and just maybe some comments. When this initial matrix was put forward, because of my conflict of interest related to this specific issue, I couldn't participate in this. Where I look at when we get these tools and things is not so much the decision-making that comes out of them, it's the complexity and the difficulty to understand the weighted scores versus scores, and then also looking at rankings and that type of thing. So that becomes very subjective or objective depending on what information and everything you're using. So that would be the one thing, is to help understand and making the public sure, because we even had that concerns with when we were looking at the fire department and how were those brought about, and it's like, where are those driven? So, I would have to have a little more confidence in understanding how we derive those and bring that forward. So that's just one aspect. When you're looking at this, for me, the other thing too is, as we look at this tool, it's becoming more and more of a decision tool, and a decision tool at a subcommittee level.
Recommendation.
Well, and that's when it says final decision matrix on here, which is kind of where we have to make sure.
I can change that.
And this is more for overall, is that we have to look at our subcommittees in terms of subcommittees, task force, like policy committees and all those, that we need to set up the standardization for them to make sure that they have agendas, that they have minutes, and I think this is for Dan, and that we have not been very, and I want to say we haven't been as great at doing that for all of our committees and so forth. And as we're starting to get into this issue of Open Meetings Act and so forth, and making decisions, I need to make sure that, from my perspective, and that we're complying with what all those mean, because even though things have happened in the past, it's still a big question, and even somebody made a comment regarding this. It's like, when you look at subcommittees, you've got to be very careful that we're not delegating any kind of decision to them. And even though the mayor does recommend policy groups and policy committees and subcommittees, ultimately it is council that really should be deriving the scope and what that and how that group is working on it. It's not one person, it's the entire body's decision how that moves on. So I would like to look back forward towards that piece of it. So when we do set up committees and those type of things, council is the one providing the direction and so forth, not just one individual. Then the other one is just understanding, this tool, as I think Councilmember Rice had mentioned, I think will work well for large single issues, but bringing it into a day-to-day activities or even to some of the smaller things we do, it's really finding out who's going to have the responsibility of it and putting it on staff and who else is going to help develop it. If it does work in a committee like you're saying, and we have that type of thing, I think it will work as you have people that you can assign to. But as we often see, ownership, accountability, and completion of that project is really dependent on who those individuals are, and they're identified that way. So do you have a way of doing that within this tool to say, this is your responsibility, you set a timeline for them and all of that? That's kind of where we've always been pushing for project management, to understand exactly who's responsible, who owns it, when it's going to be done, and how period. So if we can adopt something like that into this kind of a tool, I'd like that. And then one of the things that when we look at this comes about a very objective approach. And as we get into things, we sometimes, because we're in government, it's not so much objective as some subjective issues, whether it's health, safety, and welfare. And then we have to look at those aspects of it, how to bring that into it. And I know we've identified categories like that, but how do we best identify those to make sure that we're achieving that? And then, what was the other thing I was wondering? And I'm very concerned at times, and this goes back to council, is having an outcome before you actually analyze the situation. And so we need to make sure when we're talking about it that we're bringing all the parties into it, we're bringing everyone. This very much was an issue that needed to have a decision made on it, and within a short period of time, and was really leaning towards something. And so this was great for doing that decision, but now when we come back to look at it, the original information and everything we were looking at, the whole scope has changed since what was considered for this kind of project. So then it's the follow-up. How do we go back to this? And like I think we just mentioned here, but how do you go back to this and take out the scope? Because now the scope may not be the same as what we made a decision on 6 months ago, and did we go down the wrong path because so many factors have changed? And that has happened either with the wastewater treatment plant, the water plant, all of those things. So we need to find a tool and a way to make this part of a ongoing evaluation and process. And I appreciate your work that you've done on this, because I think this is one of the things that we do want to see this. It's really more part of a whole bigger picture of process, documentation, making sure that when we're in these committees and these task force and things like that, because even I'll admit it, our asset management group, we do have an agenda, but developing the minutes and everything like that need to be more formalized so that they can be shared. And then lastly, when we do this, it really is that issue of citizens' input that you mentioned and bringing that piece into it. So it really goes back to having open meetings, as I stated before, to get the public input, because when these are done in closed sessions, the information and so forth isn't really part of it. So as we start talking about these type of subcommittee groups, it really is making sure that that participation is more than just a few players. So.
Totally agree with you. One of the points I just want to make sure that everybody, if I didn't state it, it's my fault that I didn't say it clear enough. This is not for a final decision, it's for a recommendation from the subcommittee in a more summarized manner so that it's easy to understand, like what did we evaluate on a high level, where were some of the issues, and then we can dig into the details, but to have it be a little bit more. And I do agree with you about the follow-up, and I would say that's the reflection, and going back in 6 months, I have it in there, like we could set a cadence of what would be appropriate as far as a reflection, but you have to do that. And I definitely don't think that that's something that we are taking as much advantages of we could. And then For the follow-up items, I agree with you. I think there should be a person assigned to the item and when we're gonna, get the item and stuff, so.
Yeah, just to help move it forward, and I think that's one of the things where we go towards. We have a lot of great ideas, a lot of people come on board. It's really producing the issue, and you see that in a lot of groups, and trying to clarify that when you have ownership of it, it is your responsibility. If you don't, then you can address it and rework the whole process. So, thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gabriel. Mr. CO?
I've spent some time looking all this over, and I've spent some time doing this kind of a process in the past myself, especially when applying for federal grants. But it requires a certain mindset, a certain kind of discipline, I think, in the minds of the people that are on the subcommittee. Not all people possess that among some of the appointees that we've had, I think, in the past on some of our subcommittees. And I think it might be difficult spending the time with them, trying to acquaint them with this sort of a process. How do you feel about that?
I'm happy to be the one to help walk the next couple subcommittees through this process. I'm very comfortable with this. Again, I think that it will be a learning curve for some folks, and I do believe that usually the city manager is the leader of most of the subcommittees, or one of the staff is more consistent, but I'm more than happy to make myself available to help walk through walk through this process.
And the other point that I wanted to make or bring up is that in the past, I think some of the thorniest issues we faced is not so much data gathering and so on, but the weighting. When you came down to weighting, what really was important to me wasn't important to Janet or Chuck, and trying to get the weighting hashed out among the people sometimes can be sort of a difficult issue.
That's a really interesting comment. So there's two ways to approach that. One is we can talk about the reasoning. So Chuck can say, hey, I thought it was 20% because of this. And I say, oh, well, now that I hear your logic behind that, oh, I can see that. Maybe we can come to a consensus. Or you can have everybody evaluate it, and you could do an average of the weighting of the criteria. So there's different ways to do it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lesh?
Coming from a different sort of corporate structure, I was pharmaceuticals all my career, and I've seen a lot of different iterations of this kind of process, with the city manager essentially being the project manager at that point. Then the main difference I see is that corporate America, project manager drives it. You're there for the shareholders. Our shareholders are a very diverse bunch of people in the city of Saline and surrounding communities. So again, it's nice to do it in this way, but there's a lot of nuances, as Councilmember Gearbaugh was talking about, that you're really, for the big issues, I think this worked fine, but there's all those day-to-day kind of things. I mean, we really have to rely on our city manager, who's kind of the project manager, puts out all those fires and recommends things to council. And, at that point, we actually, we respect a lot of the opinions that we get from city staff. And the one thing I really don't want to do out of any sort of a standardized process like this is to put undue burden on city staff. These guys are busy enough, and we're here to serve the public and listen to our employed experts.
So Chuck, and I agree with you that our resources are valuable, and I just want to reiterate that this is for subcommittee report out. So when a subcommittee is assembled, this is a process for that. And I will say that having, you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So if we don't have having some sort of structure helps prevent the rework on the back end, or prevent the, oh, wait a minute, we didn't talk to this, or we didn't consider this, or, So I think having a more standardized approach, and how that can look, it can change a little bit, but we don't have anything right now. And I can tell you that I attended maybe, when you don't have a process, then maybe there's a little bit of extra time that is unnecessary, or there's maybe some more meetings. Again, it's about the efficiency, repeatable efficiency.
All right, good, thank you.
Thank you. City Manager Swallow.
Sure, yeah, thank you. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but this process you've designed is really more when an issue rises to that subcommittee level. So you're talking about a major issue that now involves the council and involves, staff. And so it wouldn't necessarily be applied, to kind of the day-to-day management, things of that nature. Because honestly, when you look at this particularly, I know, thank you for a little preview of this. Establishing that criteria and, defining all of those nuances is a time-consuming process, and we do definitely have, staff resource concerns to make sure that, council feels they're supported to an adequate level, and, so when they have their day-to-day jobs, and then, obviously, in addition, we want to make sure that that's, it is a significant issue that's coming forward and requires a subcommittee of council. So I'm comfortable with that. Just a couple of comments relative to, the Open Meetings Act. It's interesting. There's been some, case law out there that when you delegate authority from, the body, then there does need to be some additional record keeping, notice of meetings, things like that. So we do want to keep our eye on that as well. And so I'm, pulling in a lot right now, and look forward to working with you on, obviously we could maybe have, a couple different versions of this based on the level of the decision that's being made.
And then you could just pick, oh wait, this is more similar to this
Right.
version, we'll do that. Yeah, I agree with that.
Thank you. Deputy Manager Cole?
I have no questions at this time, although I will mention that with the weighting, which does seem to be one of the hardest parts of this, one of the things we were trying to move forward to was establishing that weighted criteria before we start to set up the subcommittee process, before we have that even established, so that we know from this council who sets our direction and our policy what's important to you. And to me, that's part of the beauty of the matrix, is because out of the gate, we're already talking about what are the most important characteristics to all of you for that particular project. So I think that worked really, really well with the gathering space, and I think that would continue to work well for these committee items. But I do too have a little bit of concern about the staff time, and I think that your point to repeating these and doing them over and over again, I know even for myself, repeatedly doing them has helped me learn them tremendously. So hopefully, we can look at maybe if we do end up having staff, maybe an assigned staff person or something just to make it more consistent, make it easier for everyone.
Thank you. And I'm just going to add a few comments at the end. Pretty much most of my notes have been asked and answered. But I do like the idea of project management, because I think it's been mentioned a couple times. Sometimes subcommittees kind of take a different direction. And some of that is we own from the dais, that we didn't give clear enough direction or the right time frame or the right resources, things like that. So I think there needs to be much more ownership from this group as to what the expectation is of any subcommittee. What I want to try to figure out is, as much as I like your process, trying to understand, is there currently software, is like Asana or ClearGov, BSNA, I mean, is there a way that sort of translates this a little bit more into government life than just project management of, we're not building a building, we have sort of a different, we're not making widgets. So it looks a little bit different for us at times when we're doing things. So kind of, I think we just need to hone it a little bit to find that sweet spot. But I don't want to reinvent the wheel if it already exists somewhere. And so kind of understanding if there's a way in which we can combine your concept with a pre-existing software that almost manages itself. Because I'm going to also kind of, tap the drum of staff requirements. When I looked at this, you're talking about project lead, that's staff. That's a lot on a subcommittee to have a project lead that's a staff member. Then you've got support staff involved. And then you have recording secretaries and things like that. These can take on a huge amount of time from staff and numerous staff members to do it. So sort of understanding if there's any of it that can be automated.
Yeah, I want to simplify this. So it really is just a roadmap of, steps as far as we're going to do this in this meeting, we're going to do that. The lead is, every subcommittee has a lead. Like it doesn't have to be the staff. I don't know who gets like appointed as the lead, but there is a lead for every subcommittee. I mean, I've been on a couple subcommittees and there's a lead. So whoever that person is going to, would have some responsibility, to Dean's point about what the role is for that. It doesn't have to be a staff member.
So, and then the only other question that I had or concern is, and I think it's been mentioned more than once, is the weighting aspect of things. And it was something that was, I sat on the gathering space committee also. And that was one that we really struggled with, because even when you're looking at it, and I'll use an example, parking is weighted at a certain weight, but it doesn't necessarily always read the same way, because some negatives are actually a positive. If you can understand, yes, you may lose parking spaces, but you're gaining housing. You may lose floor space, but you're gaining, green space, whatever the aspect is. So understanding that a weight is not an absolute, and sort of understanding that aspect of it. And again, I think it just comes back down to, I love process, and I do applaud what you're doing here. I think that we just need to hone it a little bit more and figure out, because it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. But I think we're very close to having something that'll be very effective for council. Mr. Appel.
Yeah, thank you. So I just had a quick question for you, Jen. So for this, we kind of talk about standard subcommittee processes, but we have some more generalistic subcommittees, right? So the one that you're iterating here was a specific project itself. So is that what you're kind of referencing on this, is when this is a specific item, a specific project with a time frame with it? Okay.
Like a special subcommittee. Now, could you use it for other things? Yeah, you could definitely use it from a more day-to-day standpoint. You could streamline it. But yeah, it could be an option to go or no go. It could be an option between you're weighing 3 different options, or you could look at personnel, weighing 3 different, individuals for a certain role. But specific to this, what I created this for is specific to subcommittees that were they're created for a special purpose to provide a recommendation to the city council.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. My apologies, Appel, for hopping over you.
Not a problem.
Mr. Gearbaugh, you have another question?
I'd like to say this is like a tool, and I think just like all of our things that we try to do, it's just another type of tool to help. And what this kind of goes back to our committee on committees, which was trying to establish some very specific requirements and approaches and things. So I'd love to see that kind of go back to that, which addresses more, here's what we are for our committees, here's what we are for your tool, here's how we are in terms of requirements and specifications. I mean, truthfully, you look at this tool, this would be a great tool to implement for the rec center assessment.
Mm-hmm.
That is such a good point, Mr. Gearbaugh, the Committee on Committees. Let's, if my colleagues are amenable, let's maybe bring that committee back together to take another look at this and see how we can maybe break this into a couple of things. A subcommittee recommendation that's a little more detailed, but how can we adapt some of this to commissions, to smaller projects, things like that. I think that's the perfect venue for this.
And then hopefully we can sunset that committee too.
I don't know. I think that committee should meet once a year just to reevaluate the committees.
It's really hard when you put on a committee and you're not really sure what are we doing here? What are we having? What are we going to do this meeting? And so it just gives a more of a roadmap to like, this is what we're going to do this meeting, and then once we feel confident that we've move to the next step.
Definitely. I mean, that's how we've got to start adapting more of these type tools. And then it's really mentoring and trying to figure out how to train people that succeed us to do those type of committees and things.
And like I said, I'm more than happy to help with the growing pains of, to facilitate this.
Sounds good.
Fantastic. Other questions, comments, statements? Okay. Anything else?
I don't. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for bringing this to us. Is there any other business to come before us in our work meeting?
Well, I'll move to close at 6:50.
Okay. So moved by Gearbox, second by CO, to adjourn our meeting at 6:50. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Then we are adjourned. We have a 10-minute break till we start up for regular session. Thank you.
Okay, I got 7 o'clock. Okay. I'd like to call the Saline City Council meeting to order. If you please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very good. From City Council this evening, members present include Council members Gearbaugh, CO, Rice, Lesh, Harmount, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, and Mayor Marl. From City staff, we have incoming City Manager Swallow, City Clerk Royal, Deputy City Manager Cole, City Engineer Humphreys, HR Director Getzman, and DPW Director Hoppala. We do want to welcome Mr. Swallow to his first City Council meeting on your first day. Hope the first 11, 12 hours have gone well for you. We look forward to working with you, and again, we acknowledge the leadership of former Acting City Manager Cole, now Deputy City Manager Cole, over the past 6 months. She did an exceptional job leading our organization, and we thank her for her dedicated service. At this time, the Chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted, unless there are amendments.
As submitted?
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Dillon to approve as submitted. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by CO. All those in favor of approving as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. There are no absences, so we'll proceed with citizen comments. And I should have noted at the top of the meeting, copies of the agenda are on the back table, along with listening devices and a sign-in sheet. We encourage you to sign in and state your, of course, address for the record. We come now to the first public comment period, and this is limited to agenda items. Under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time making a comment or question about an item that appears on the agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Those wishing to speak are requested but not required to state their name and address for the record. Before you begin your comments, please clearly state the specific agenda item you are addressing. Please note that City Council does not generally answer questions during this initial public comment period. Are there any citizen comments this evening on agenda items? You may come forward. You will have 3 minutes. You can adjust the podium to your height and make sure the green light is illuminated at the base of that microphone.
Eric Grossman, Macon Road. This is Ordinance 877, the electric mobility devices, primarily e-bikes. As a rider, I prefer riding in the street, but there are some streets and partial sections of roadway, like Ann Arbor Street, where it's risky to compete with traffic. I fully understand the need for pedestrian safety, but kicking bike riders onto Michigan Avenue and Ann Arbor Street without any prior infrastructure updates to the roadways is creating a safety hazard for cyclists having to navigate along parked cars and busy traffic. Ask any downtown merchant if they are willing to lose street side parking for bike lanes, or do they prefer shared use sidewalks? Setting speed limits for sidewalks is a more responsible alternative. For instance, the class designation for e-bikes is a program option within many e-bikes. You can toggle between class 1, 2, and 3. A speed limit puts all classes on the same plane. Someone going the speed limit or otherwise riding responsibly on a class 3 bike may be denied forms of insurance coverage even though they are riding in a considerate and safe manner. The type of bike isn't the issue, generally speed is. There are many options that should be considered, and postponing this action will allow you time to create a safe environment for pedestrians and cyclists alike. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grossman. Appreciate your comments. Any additional citizen comments on agenda items? Nancy?
I'm Nancy Miller, 663 Springbrook Court in Saline. This is regarding the Asset Management Subcommittee. I commend the work of the Asset Management Subcommittee as it works to prioritize and budget for the many assets the city owns and manages, ones that provide essential services and safety to the Saline community. As stated in the report, it is essential and cost-effective to inspect and repair these assets promptly to extend the life of these assets. I look forward to City Council using this approach to repair the Saline River Dam, to maintain the dam, preserve Mill Pond, and maintain the historic structures Henry Ford built as part of the dam. Mill Pond is a significant asset to the Saline community, and it's enjoyed by citizens and by visitors from around Southeast Michigan. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Any additional citizen comments on agenda items this evening? Then I would defer to the city clerk. I believe we have at least one written comment submitted in advance of tonight's meeting in which the individual wanted their remarks read at this time. Is that correct?
Correct.
Very good. You may begin.
This is from David Rhodes, 663 Springbrook Court. It states, I applaud the work of the Asset Management Subcommittee, which resulted in the presentation dated September 2025. I strongly support the intent to implement the right to fix at the right time, as illustrated in the chart on page 3. A prime example is the crack filling on our streets to extend the useful life of at a relatively minor expense. I look forward to the same principle being applied toward keeping Mill Pond by the anticipated repairs to the dam, which provides the pond for all to enjoy.
Very good. Any additional written comments, Clerk Royal? Well, we appreciate the comment made by our former colleague, Mr. Rhodes. If there are no additional citizen comments this evening, and there appear to be none, we're going to transition to the one and only presentation, which is an update from our Asset Management Subcommittee. I'm going to invite the city engineer, Ms. Humphreys, forward to begin the PowerPoint presentation. At the conclusion of her remarks, I believe she's going to be joined by DPW Director Hopla. Is that correct? Very good. At the conclusion of their remarks, I will defer to the Deputy City Manager, El Cole, who has been I guess the primary staff liaison to the Asset Management Committee, in addition to our two colleagues in front of me. And then we'll hear from, if any members of council who serve on that body would like to make comment or ask a question, I will defer to them. And that would include Council Members Lesh, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, and Council Members Gearbaugh. You may begin. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So, yeah, Tasha and I decided to put together this presentation, go through kind of step by step through this agenda. We'll cover what is asset management. So how does asset management impact our capital planning, our historical approach to capital projects versus our current approach to capital projects with this asset management mindset. Then we have our asset management subcommittee, why it was established, the goals of that committee, what accomplishments have been made up to this point. Again, this committee's been established for 1 year's time. And then what our next steps are as a group. So currently, what is asset management? So asset management plan components are what assets do we actually own, where are they located, assessing those assets and determining truly what the condition they may be in, how are they performing, and are they performing as they were initially intended, what is also risk of failure, criticality of failure, identifying all of those things. And then what are the life cycle costs of that asset? So if we are to spend $1 million on an asset that lasts 20 years, we can expect to then spend 40% of that on maintenance over the course of that 20 years. So it's not just that initial onset cost, but it's that continued maintenance that we cannot neglect. So again, now we move into our capital improvement planning and how these two kind of commingle. So again, capital improvement planning is the process of identifying, prioritizing, and budgeting for major projects that improve or extend that life of a property. So asset management, we're trying to focus on planning for these things, doing the assessments and not waiting until something fails and not being reactionary. Now, obviously, there are still those instances and we still need to be armed and ready to go, but it is our plan to have an assessment of all of these assets to the best of our capability, have plans put in place that we can easily pivot from when these problems arise, and we're not left picking up the pieces trying to figure out how we move forward after the fact. So again, that capital investment should not be reactionary, and that implementation of those asset management principles will truly allow us to make data-driven decisions the majority of the time until we have those instances where we are required to make that reactionary response. So part of this asset management subcommittee, we really delineated out our asset subcategories. So we have our essential, so again, we've got our water, our wastewater, our stormwater. Without these things, none of the rest can really exist. And then below, we also have 4 criteria, so our IT, our SCADA, our buildings, and our fleet that are critical to maintain those three assets. Then we've got our safety. Again, none of those can exist without the essential. But again, the safety is imperative to our citizens' everyday lives here in Saline. And then our community enhancement. How do how do we maintain a level of service in the community, right? How can we retain residents wanting to live here, attract people to move in here? So that's kind of how we have that sequentially laid out. Yep.
So thank you. I'm going to take just a minute. I think there are a few new faces here, and a little bit on my history. I started here after 4 years in the winter. So 22 was my first construction season here. So this is my 4th construction season here. And these are my observations of what I stepped into 4 years ago, how we were, our approach to asset management. Reactionary capital spending is that someone complained about a road and we added it to our plan to fix it. A good example of that would be Marple and Woodhill. I think you guys are well aware of that. I came here multiple times about that. I think I had a $500,000 or maybe $1 million budget when I started with that. Did not address the failing storm sewer under the road, did not address the need to address the issue of the trees and curb stops. So that project ballooned in cost and scope, and it's still on a shelf because we know it's still a local project that we're looking to find funding for. That's where the scope reduction to meet budget constraints. I've seen a lot of historic capital projects that have gone through the files here where we were reducing down the project to meet the budget constraints, which that ultimately just costs us more in the long run, right? Preventative maintenance delayed, and that's, I guess I want to step back and say, none of these problems are unique to Saline. I've said that multiple times to you guys. We are a small municipality with a lot of assets that are very old. So many of our assets are at that point where we have to spend more and more money just to keep the same level of service. So, and unfortunately over the years, our staff, we shrunk by losing staff and we didn't replace that while we continue to grow. That results ultimately in preventative maintenance being delayed. There were costs with preventative maintenance. So that ultimately takes away from the life of your asset. And the biggest one that is skill staff utilized for community enhancement. DPW has I guess the largest staff here. They have all of the equipment, Vector truck, skilled staff that can maintain our utilities, and they're often spending a lot of their time doing community enhancement type things. And the same was true of my position when I started here. My position was very heavily invested into parks, and that's again on the community enhancement side. So shifting every minute somebody spends on community enhancement is one we're not spending on essential, right? We're not that big. So back to our historical approach to asset management. This Old Creek Drive is a great example. It was, I'm talking about south of Dairy Queen where it was connected. It was originally connected south of, I should say, Bemis Henry, originally connected in 1995. It is a federal road that we received funding for, so we repaved it in 2018. In 2019, there was all the municipalities got SAW grants. First kind of, the state of Michigan was like, hey guys, check out this asset management stuff. So one of the things in that very first SAW grant we identified was the need to upsize our East Belt sanitary sewer. And so that was identified in 2019, and that's when I started in 22. When we're getting ready to dig up this road that we had just repaved. We were in the middle of design at that time. It was supposed to be bid out in July. Our engineering consulting firm said, to meet the schedule, we need to bid out in July of 22. And we were going to close Maple for two construction seasons. Maple is the road serves the middle school. So that's the project I inherited. I ultimately delayed the start of the bidding until November, spent a little bit more on engineering to reduce the scope of the sanitary sewer improvements from 3,500 linear feet to 2,100 linear feet, reduce the project to one season, and saved us a few $1 million in the process. So, and that's where, you're actually looking at all of your assets at once. You can ultimately save the big dollars in the capital. Here's a couple other, feathers in the engineering cap here. This is kind of the history since I started, right? So July 22, we first started investing in GIS to get our actual assets where we need inventory, step one. Spring of 23 is when we first took our capital plan. I'm gonna go back a slide here. Down here, this was our old capital plan. This was, finance always prepared it, did a great job. It was in Excel, stored in Excel in finance. So 23 was the first year we actually had a landing spot for all department heads to collaborate on all of our assets. And that's ClearGov, what you see here. Does it look that way on there? It does look like you can barely read all of it, can't you? Mm-hmm. It's almost like it shifted. It wasn't like that when we looked at it earlier today, was it? But anyways, I can still go through. The March of 18, I think we've talked a lot about our transportation asset management plan. Out of that, we were able to complete our local road resurfacing project, touching about 40% of our local roads over the last 2 years. And the nice thing about that is we hit that in the early stage of those roads, so we can save money in the long term on that. We hit it at the right time to not have to expend more money on preventative maintenance a few years down the road. In August of '24, we adopted the strategic plan with asset management as its top, and the asset management subcommittee was established. The dam removal feasibility study is on here, and I'm glad it was actually brought up in the comments before. I think this is an excellent case of effective asset management. You're studying our assets. Is it doing what it was originally intended to? We're going to fully understand what it costs to either rehabilitate or remove it before we move forward with a decision. And I think that's what's so important is we have all of the data before we make decisions. We move from that reactionary to planning type phase. And the public is used to us being reactionary. So they think we talk about the dam is going to go away tomorrow. And any time I've talked about the dam, I've always said this is a slow moving project. Now, the more we study it, the more concerned I get about, but still, it's still a slow moving project. It's something we need to fully understand before we make a decision, right? That's effective asset management. And then what you can't see here are water and sanitary sewer master plan updates, which I won't go into too much detail on those. Those are coming. We're working on them. So these slides, just quickly, the goal of the Asset Management Subcommittee, I'm just going to point out here, is to prioritize capital planning and discussion related to wastewater and water assets above all others. I view the goals of the Asset Management Subcommittee to try to get us to a point where we understand all of our assets so we can prioritize our capital projects. What have we done in the last year in the Asset Management Subcommittee? We meet every month. We talk about our asset lists and our capital projects. We've determined the asset categories we've talked about here. We've identified what goes in each, and we've classified each of them as essential, safety, or community enhancement. So this, you saw the slide earlier. What's added onto the slide this time is the actual life cycle costs of an asset. And unfortunately, for many of these categories, we are now already down here. We're already to the point where we've lost, like we just have this investment that is needed. And we need to fully understand that investment for both of our sewer, water rates, and our general fund assets. This is purposely overwhelming, just to kind of identify just to show you the thousands of data points we're trying to gather here. I'm just going to go over the first column, water distribution. That consists of water main, valves, and hydrants. But the water main, there are 40 miles of water main. There are 1,000 valves. There are 550 hydrants for each valve. We know what way it opens, what type of valve it is, what size of valve it is, what structure it's stored in. There's multiple data points, to my point, for all of these categories. We're talking thousands of data points that we're truly still gathering. Next up is, for each category, condition assessment. Is this asset serving its original intention? What is the funding source for this asset? I've spent a lot of time on dam this year, right? And that's every minute I spend on that is something I'm not spending in another asset. What is the level of service that we want this asset to provide our customers? What are the capital costs and ongoing operational costs? And once we get all of that data, we can actually prioritize our capital projects. Anything else to add?
No, I think that's, so again, in my now almost 7 or 8 months of being here, I think that's what we've really tried to drive home, is we are truly in that data gathering stage with all of these assets, right? First, identifying what impact does this make to the community, right? Is it essential? Is it safety? Is it community enhancement? Then let's analyze where that's at, when it was installed, where it's at in its useful life, how much longer it's got, any reports we've had on any issues with that in the past, and then start to commingle all of that together, right? And really adopt that dig once mentality for it. So that's where we're starting to move to. That data gathering phase is a long, dragged out process. Again, that's CCTV of hundreds of thousands of feet of sanitary sewer, of storm sewer. That's evaluating all of our water main data, as Tesha pointed out. That's going through our PASER ratings on our roads and trying to analyze how do we spend 80% of our funds on preventative maintenance, or 80% of our time on preventative maintenance, only 20% of that on capital, and then the inverse for the funds. And so I think that's where we're starting to drive now with with our asset management subcommittee. I think we just have started to touch on where do we feel our levels of service are in these categories as well, right? And where do we feel we could use improvements? Where do we feel that we're spending plenty of time on potentially a community enhancement where we don't need to ramp up the time and cost on those things, and we can afford that somewhere else where it's much more needed. So again, getting us into a place where we have the data at our disposal, and it's truly just kind of moving levers, right? We can look at something not in a vacuum, not in a silo, but see the whole picture when we're making a determination. And again, like Tesha pointed out, I think the dam is a perfect project to embody this, right? Because it truly does give the community the chance to hear all of the facts, hear all the data, have their voices heard, and give you, the council, the time to deliberate and make a decision without the time aspect pressure of, hey, this needs to be done tomorrow, next week, next month. And so that truly, in essence, is where we're at with the asset management subcommittee. This is something that is kind of done in perpetuity, right? These assets are always ever evolving. The data gets us to what I like to call the 90% mark. And there's that 10% of variability that without infrared vision of what's below us and what's in the walls and everything around us, we can't always predict, but we can be ready and prepared.
Very good. Thank you both. I appreciate the presentation. Engineer Humphries, can you confirm, because I actually fielded several text messages and emails today. There was some confusion. A number of residents and community stakeholders thought we were revisiting the dam issue specifically tonight, but that'll be a topic for a special presentation at our first meeting in October, which is October 6th, correct?
Yes, October 6th is the date we had talked about.
Very good. And additionally, Director Hoppel, you are indeed correct. The asset management team has existed for about a year now, but actually prior to your tenure, we had a working group that was a bit more narrow in focus, that was meeting on a bi-monthly basis on specific to water and wastewater. And we decided under the leadership of our former city manager to extrapolate the focus, make it broader, do a deeper dive onto all of our capital assets, and to include some additional stakeholders and council members in those discussions as well. Deputy City Manager Cole, before I open it up for questions or comments from my council colleagues, is there anything that you would like to add?
I would like to add that, since City Engineer Humphries has enacted this right fix at the right time, we have seen a tremendous growth in our ability to extend the life of our assets for a lower cost. So we're seeing this work for us and be factual right in the moment, and I couldn't applaud the work that the asset subcommittee has done within the last year and a half. It's very nice to see our assets all organized now, and I'm really looking forward to us being able to apply this to our capital improvement plan and put some weighting onto that, which will make our plan more agile.
Thank you for that. City Manager Swallow, again, you're about 12 hours in at this juncture. And I also understand from the Deputy City Manager, because she and I spoke earlier today, that you'll be attending your first Asset Management Subcommittee meeting on Friday morning. So I don't mean to put you on the spot. We look forward to hearing your insights subsequent to that, and subsequent, of course, to you being able to do a deeper dive into some of this material information. But is there anything that you'd like to add at this time?
No, I appreciate the logical approach to the asset management plan, starting, what do we own? Where is it located? What is the condition? Is it performing? What are the life cycle costs? So I think they are approaching, I spent a lot of time actually over at DPW today, learning a little bit more about, where they're at in this process, as well as, some of their needs and wants in terms of where we go from here. So I think they're taking a logical stepwise approach, and I support that, and we'll continue to, track that very closely.
Very good. Let me start to my right and to my left. Mr. Lesh, as a member of the asset management team, is there anything you'd like to add at this time?
I would just like to compliment everybody that's on that committee. Actually, it's a diverse group, and I think a well thought out group. I applaud DPW Capella. Coming in, he hit the ground running, and he is kind of a resident expert on asset management coming in, so he was a big help to that committee. And of course, Deputy City Manager Cole being able to translate that asset management into a computer program that we can actually track things with now is making the process much more clear and visible to everybody. So, well done.
Very good. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. Yes, also as a member of that committee, I attend a lot of meetings, that one I find to be very fruitful in discussion. What's funny is people will see this chart. It took us so long to come up with this chart because you don't realize all the assets that we have, and all of a sudden we're like, hey, wait a minute, what about the light poles? What about, things that we just didn't forget? So we had to keep adding things into it because you just sort of forget about everything. And this is a snapshot. I just want people to understand this graph. There's actually like 4 more columns off of it that have other data that I think at some point everyone will be able to see all of that other data that's coming off of there. But there's been a lot of conversation about it and prioritizing, and I do think that it's going to be a much better decision-making tool for us than what we've done in the past. I did want to just make a couple of comments about things just very quickly so that people understand. When we start talking about like valve turning, like we've done a lot of different things. And I guess, where are people going to see that? Is it going to show in GIS to say, oh, well, the results of valve turning or smoke tests or all of these other things that we've had done, so that the future generation is going to say, oh, now I see where you left off and where I pick up from. Because sometimes we forget we've changed vendors, we've changed engineers, we've done different things, and just sort of understanding where's all of that data stored.
Yeah, so I'm going to go back a few slides here. And so in Tesha's timeline that she put in here, right? So we see July 2022. And we had a work session with council, I believe, back in June regarding GIS and how much we've implemented that here at the city. And that's really the approach that I've taken for things like that, right? For some of our operational activities that we are doing and ongoing, we're now tracking that through different GIS layers, right? That then is cataloged for historical data and context, right? And trying to build that out to include whatever data we may need, right? So if it's hydrant flushing, when we were there, how long it was open, the sequencing that we went in, who was there, all of those things, and then cataloged, right? We're doing all of that. So like you said, right? It almost, to a certain extent, eventually becomes turnkey for that 90%, right? You can kind of hand over the tools to someone and say, this is all of the data. This is what we're doing, fine-tune the 10%, right? And there's always improvements that we can make, but we now have a 90% in place that can continue as we continue to progress, right? We never leave off any of that preventative maintenance. There's no loss of knowledge from people retiring, from people leaving for other jobs, right? That stays here with that organization, with that department, with us as a city as whole, which is also, I think, one of the most tremendous aspects of this subcommittee that we don't talk about, right? We talk about the data, but we don't talk about the people in that meeting, the stakeholders. Chuck, you had alluded to it. The diverse group that we have and everyone's input to it is so vital to what we do here, right? So there isn't conversations happening in vacuums and silos, and we all know what's going on, and we're all supporting each other with those decisions.
If I may, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, could you elaborate on that point primarily for the public's benefit? So the Asset Management Subcommittee consists not only of key staff people and 3 of my council colleagues, but also some private citizens, individuals who have an expertise and background in engineering and asset management.
Yes. Tom Abra and John Ambrose.
Yes. Who are local residents. So Tom actually worked for us decades ago in a previous capacity with Tetra Tech and then did consulting work with OHM. John has been on a number of boards and committees in the city of Saline, is also a retired engineer, and serves on our risk mitigation team as well.
Yes, and that's what I'm excited to get into as well, right? As I see those next steps as being our levels of service as well, right? What metric do we have as a measurable for how we perceive that asset and how it is providing its services to the community, right? And so we've got kind of your professional expertise on how we're evaluating it, right? And we have city council, how you're seeing it from a policy standpoint, and then we have members of the public who are seeing it as a resident taxpayer and how they're using those on a day-to-day basis. So we can truly come together with kind of a culmination of those 3 viewpoints and start to refine things.
Right. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. And I just wanted to end, Engineer Humphreys, you had mentioned something about sort of finding the balance with skilled labor and where they're being utilized. And this has sort of been a topic that we've had for many, many years. How do we find the balance with that? Do we need to start looking at outsourcing some of our things? And when we're talking about these, we're talking about things like grass cutting, hanging banners, and that sort of thing, correct?
Yeah, I would say yes, that plus everything in the community enhancement. My comment earlier was alluding to everything in the community enhancement, but yes, absolutely. Those are all things that I would consider community enhancement activities.
Right. And so then trying to understand then, do we need to delineate that skilled labor force, what they're going to do and what their tasks should be versus other tasks, and should those be recategorized?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a fantastic question, right? And I think that's something that, again, we're in that data gathering stage of first honing in how much time we're spending on these activities, truly, just the manpower it's taking, and then the cost to maintain those things. Then cross-reference that with how do we feel that level of service? Where do we feel like that is on a measurable scale, right? And then, again, bringing that into the conversation of the three assets, right? Are we now over-prioritizing man-hours and money on a community enhancement item? Meanwhile, we've been neglecting something that may be in essential or safety, right? And so, again, that's where we just start, it's fine-tuning, right? It's never going to be an absolute answer, but we can start to get ourselves to a point where we're better utilizing the resources that we have available to us.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Councilmember Gearbaugh, as a member of the Asset Management Team, any comments you'd like to make at this time?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a part of this before when it was a wastewater treatment plant, special task force, and then we moved into this asset management, which was the goal of us to determine what assets and what things are outside of those could be addressed. I mean, even us looking at our building, this building's a prime example of making sure the responsibility is identified in those parts. One of the things that we've looked at this for over a year on developing this document was to actually reconcile it back to our BS&A software where the actual assets are recorded and trying to determine whether our inventories are matching up to what we actually have and what we can do. Then the other part of this is we're hoping to go back and reconcile from even our auditor's perspective, our capital improvement plans, which have from 5 years ago completely changed to what we currently have now. So it's trying to understand why did a project drop to why are we now focusing on this issue. And I mean, it's clearly being Mr. Hapla's approach and having the expertise and the leadership now in the DPW that will address these issues and, you know, account for the things that may have fallen through the cracks in the past. One of the things is we've invested in staff in both the wastewater treatment plant and in DPW, which is starting to reflect it. The asset management group has supported Mr. Briggs, yourself, and other individuals to really address the concerns that are coming up from staff, coming up from management, trying to address that we have the powers and the abilities and the tools, and our city managers empowered to make sure that those things actually occur and can be fixed and improved upon to make sure that we are addressing the issues that could affect whether or not something is successful or if it's maintained. Staff are our resources for which we need to make sure that not only are they encouraged, but they're also accountable for what they're doing. And I think one of the things we looked at, the other thing that we've been talking about most recently was prioritization, is really looking at, because like we did back in 2008, and even during 2020, we had to reevaluate what level of issues can we do. And we got to go back and say, if the state fails to pass a budget, if the feds don't give us our funding, what projects do we have to now reevaluate and step around and figure out how to address those going forward? My biggest concern with the overall issues that we still have to deal with specifics. Water infrastructure. I know our engineering is helping address with looking at the infrastructure itself, not necessarily the water product, but we're having to look at what are we doing in terms of improving to make sure that the brown water that everybody's concerned about still gets addressed. Where we really want this committee to go forward to, and with this tool, is to be able to communicate to council what are these concerns, what are the issues, what are we looking at, and trying to figure out exactly combining this between GIS and with this type of document is really trying to find something, as Ms. Dillon mentioned, something that's more institutional, not necessarily based in a spreadsheet, and trying to make sure that that document, as you said, translates from people as they move along and from historical, and we can go back and look. I mean, even the issue with relating to how we're cleaning our, flushing hydrants and so forth. That documentation and stuff is starting to get in place so that we know what happened one year, we know what happened from 3 months to next month to next month. So for me, understanding and making sure that council understands how we're moving forward with and achieving the goals is one of the things of asset management, but it's really more the advisory individuals that are part of it, because Tom and John have provided significant input from their own perspectives out in the public, and then also Lori Champion from her risk management approach has helped us in the past too. So as we move forward, I'm looking forward to more participation from our members of council, and I know we'll have new ones in January. So this should be a very much appreciated thing, and again, appreciate your leadership in this and what you're doing.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. Let me stay on the left side of the dais. I'll begin with Councilmember Rice. Councilmember Rice, any questions or comments for the members of the asset management team, specifically DPW Director Hopala or Engineer Humphreys?
Yes, thank you. I feel really lucky because with the exception of my colleague, Mr. Lesh, everyone to the right of me may have a little PTSD from how things used to be run in the city. My first term was started on January 1st of 2023. So when I decided to run for council in 2022, we had been dealing with all of these issues. I was one of the #1 houses for brown water because I was stuck at some weird thing where the valve wasn't turned the right direction, something along those lines. No one could find the water box thing out in front of my house. I remember someone showing up one day in like 2017 or 2018 and said, well, I read on a piece of paper where someone took a note about blah, 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 right? So fast forward to this year, I'm sitting next to Director Hopala and I ask a question and he pulls it up on his phone and we're zooming in on stuff and we're looking at stuff. Or I ask a question to foreperson Marion, and the very next day he emails me in the morning and he's like, yes, we have the blah, 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 because they can look and they can see in GIS that it's in there now. It was Post-it notes and memories up until 2022. So I'm super lucky going forward in my my tenure here that I've been able to watch you guys implement this, but I don't have the scaries that everyone else on this dais has from the past. So I'm fully confident that this GIS database that you all are building with all of these assets and then tying that into the financials and our capital management. You know, I ran on this back in 2022. It was like, how do you not know where the water box is in front of my house? How are you not managing your assets? So I feel very fortunate that I can kind of look through this with rose-colored glasses, that I've seen those changes since literally the day that I sat down. So I really just applaud you both for that. Tesha, you know, we kind of started on this journey at the same time. So in my mind, I feel like I just got here. I don't know how you've gotten all this done in that small amount of time, but I applaud you for that. I'm really pleased that Saline is, you know, up to date. I mean, for crying out loud, 2022 GIS. I learned GIS in 2001 in college. So the fact that we just implemented it in 2022 or began looking at it in 2022. So yeah, I would like to, I really appreciate these updates. The one thing that I do think would be beneficial to council is to have more of those touch points with us and just kind of let us know where projects stand, so that it's not a year later where we're like, oh yeah, what about that? What about Marpool? You know, just kind of keep us more up to date with that kind of stuff. I don't know if it's, you know, through the city manager's weekly emails or something along those lines. I think that way we can talk to the constituents about where we are with things, and it's not a year later where it then looks like, you know, the city engineer put it to the side. No, the city engineer informed us. We know what's going on. This is the reason why. It's a bigger project than it would have been had the city engineer not caught it. So that's all. Thank you for this update. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Rice. Councilmember Harmount, any questions or comments for members of the asset management team?
I do. Old assets do not need to mean archaic means of tracking. So I really applaud this strategic asset management plan. It is vital for fiscal responsibility for our assets in the city of Saline. With regards to your community enhancement, I just had an idea about this. Is there a way to divert that workload away from staff into like maybe volunteering? Ann Arbor has Give 360, and they're able to consistently get volunteers in to do park cleanups and do small projects. Along with scouting, is there a way that we can maybe divert some of that off of the plate and see if there's ways that we can free that staff time up?
I think we currently use some volunteers for historic buildings especially, but that's, I guess, the extent I know of.
The Friends of the Parks program that we're trying so hard to put together. Through the Parks Commission, we're trying to put together a Friends of the Parks program where ideally, last year was our first year of just kind of getting started. Ideally, we have a list that just continues and grows, and people who utilize the parks who are interested can show up at a park and they know that this corner of the park needs to be raked or that this sign needs to be painted, things like that. The Parks Commissioners themselves are always out there doing those things, scraping things and painting things and stuff like that. So I would love to work more closely with you, Zach, especially on helping us build that list of things that need to be done by volunteers, and we can do it.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm trying to get to, right? I'm very data driven in the decisions I make. I try and leave subjectivity at the door, right? But right now we're still in that data gathering stage, right? Trying to identify how much time we are spending on things, what equipment is required for those things, right? There may be some things that is just way too far reaching for any type of volunteer group to do, right? Again, and we value through a level of service that, hey, this is so vital and unique to Saline. It is something we hang our hat on, something that we have absolute pride in. There's always going to be those factors from community to community that DPW will still provide support on, right? But again, trying to evaluate that as a whole and not in a silo or in a vacuum, right? Seeing how that fits in the entire picture and how everything commingles, trying to figure out, is this sustainable? Can we still maintain this while maintaining everything else?
I have one other question, sorry. So we talked about the mapping of the GIS mapping of the assets, and then maybe a schedule to see where are we at, like what's the milestones and where do we think we're going to get completed? Are we any closer to that, getting a
as far as beyond what's in the strategic plan, or just an update from, because I think the strategic plan outlines this, so the strategic plan had a schedule for effective asset management, so beyond what's in that.
So is that, I don't remember that specifically, but did it map out when we're going to have the rest of our assets mapped in that system?
So you want a detailed plan, like all the way down to community enhancement assets?
I guess for the GIS, for our horizontal assets, like when are, obviously there's an end point of having them all mapped out. And I don't know where we're at. I thought like 75% or something like that.
Some of the assets are at that. So we have one of the columns that Councilmember Dillon was speaking of earlier was we have other columns. So it says one of the columns is in GIS, stored in GIS, and then what is the percentage complete in GIS. So all of these categories, all that you see on this right now, all 32 of these or whatever it ends up being, has a column, and I would say half of them are populated at this time, as far as where we're at with that, like as far as what percentage is in GIS, because some of these assets we haven't gotten to, like signs, for instance, or traffic signs.
Right.
Those are not in GIS, and if you start looking around, there's lots of different. I mean, that's an undertaking that we have to do. So that's something that's not even in GIS yet. So that says no in GIS. But where our water main, for instance, we have GPS. 95% of our structures say they're sewer. So there are varying levels right now, and I think it's. And I'm just struggling to give you an exact date because this is a living document that will always be added to. Now, I do think it's fair though to say when are we proposing to move from this essential to the safe? Like that's our general progression. That's what we're saying right now. We're still in this high level, trying to get moving our resources from this column over to this column so that we can provide the minimum essential services to our constituents so the community can thrive. And that's where we're at.
Thank you, Councilmember Harmon. Councilmember Seo, any comments or questions for members of our asset management team?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a couple of comments. I can't say how gratified I am to see all these things coming together and coming to fruition. I hearken back to the years in the 1980s when I was in the data processing at Ann Arbor Police Department, and we had just gotten word processing. And I said, you know, as wonderful as you think these machines are, we need to set aside a sinking fund so that in 5 years' time, when these become obsolete, we can replace them without having to come back to City Council and request a huge budget amount for all new equipment. And people looked at me like I had two heads, and they said, what do you mean? These things work so great, how can we ever replace them? What would we ever want to do? Also, I was sent to Anaheim, California to go to a conference on this wonderful new concept of geographic information systems. And now here we are, tying all this together. We have the Vehicle Replacement Fund, we have the Capital Improvement Plan, we have the Asset Management Plan. All those things come together to work toward the future to make sure that we have what we need, when we need it, and how we need it. And I applaud you people. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions, comments from the dais? City Manager, Deputy City Manager, anything else you'd like to add at this time?
I think the most critical point for me and for council is when this is complete, you get predictability. When when this asset needs to be replaced, and so it doesn't come as a surprise, and that's getting away from that reactionary. So I think the way they're building it out, it gives the tools in the field. I mean, we talked about literally DPW, workers will have that tablet and they can find your water box. so they'll have those tools in the field. And then obviously the end goal is prioritizing those capital projects so that you feel comfortable, yes, we're spending the money in the right areas, and it becomes more predictable year after year. You get more comfortable with where council is allocating resources. And I think that's the critical point and the end point we're working towards.
Very good. Ms. Cole, anything else? Good. Engineer Humphries, DPW Director Hopla, thank you very much. Appreciate your time this evening. We look forward to revisiting this issue in the not too distant future. And good luck at your meeting on Friday. We're going to proceed then to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any council member or citizen, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for discussion. I'll let Rice be the mover and CO be the second. That was to approve as submitted, I believe. Is that correct, Ms. Rice? Yes. Very good. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as submitted signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We come to unfinished business agenda, item 25-133, ordinance number 877, electric bikes, electric skateboards, and electric personal assistive mobility devices. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt and to postpone until October 20th, 2025.
Move to acknowledge and postpone.
Moved by Gearbock to acknowledge and to postpone. Was that seconded by Harmount? Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Deputy City Manager Cole, do you care to make a brief statement?
Yes, very brief. Thank you so much. Following the introduction of the draft e-bike policy, some residents have expressed some concerns that the proposal may feel too restrictive at this time. From the concerns to the e-bikes being pushed onto roads where cars are driving, to the uphill battle of pushing your e-bike up Henry Street, which is a pretty steep hill. We heard from everyone, and we really took it in and listened to them, and we would like to suggest and recommend a pivot. As an alternative, staff would like to suggest a more measured first step. First, install signage on Ann Arbor Saline Road from Henry to Michigan Avenue, just encouraging people to walk their bicycles, e-bikes, skateboards through our downtown area. And then we would like to modify the existing ordinance to explicitly include the e-bikes in those policies rather than adopting a new standalone policy or framework at this stage. This approach would address the immediate safety and pedestrian flow while giving us some time to gauge the effectiveness and community response. If council is open to this adjustment, staff can return at the second meeting in October with a revised proposal reflecting this direction.
Very good. City Manager Swallow, anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think we're all aware this is evolving technology, and so addressing it is important. I think starting with a policy and working towards it, ultimately, if it needs to be enforceable through ordinance, that's acceptable.
Deputy City Manager Cole, I will support a motion to postpone. I think your approach or recommendation is measured and reasonable. My visceral reaction when reading your memorandum was, is postponing or deferring until October 20th, do you really believe that that gives you enough time to collect additional data and to engage with key stakeholders downtown?
Yes, I do. I believe that the changes, we've already engaged with the stakeholders downtown. We've spoken with people we need to talk to. So really, this is just kind of a step back in our work almost. So I think that'll give us plenty of flexibility and we'll be able to do that time.
And when do you expect that the signage that you made reference to will be placed in the strategic areas downtown?
Well, we'd like to come back with a plan on when we're going to be placing the signs, what they would look like, what they'll say, and then the other alterations that we've just suggested.
Okay. All right. My apologies, I misunderstood. Thank you for that clarification. Additional comments, questions from the dais? Councilmember Rice, and we've got a bunch of hands there. I'll do Rice, Dillon, Seal.
Thank you. So I brought this forward to the policy committee after complaints from a couple of business owners, specifically on South Ann Arbor Street, where the sidewalk gets pretty tight. So I'm amenable to doing some community outreach before completing an ordinance. I'm also amenable to taking this back to the policy committee, and maybe we can take another look at it and try to simplify it a bit and maybe make some accommodations for some of these concerns that the community have given to us. So I think perhaps we could do those two things simultaneously. Ms. Cole, you could go down your path and then we can also bring it back to policy and take another look at it.
I think that we would prefer to do that as well so that we can make sure that we have a policy that's in place that we can present to council on the second meeting in October.
Perfect, thank you.
Question for Councilmember Rice, and I guess Councilmembers Dillon and Mr. Lesh, Councilmember Lesh, who chairs the policy committee. Do you have a meeting scheduled between now and the 20th, or can you schedule a meeting between now and the 20th to report out and share something substantive on at our second meeting in October?
We don't have anything on the books, but
We're doing it as needed anyway, so.
exactly.
Shouldn't be a problem, I assume.
Nah.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
Thank you. I really appreciate that we've decided to take a step back from this. There was definitely some community pushback. And for me, I really don't feel as though I can support something that we are actually not going to enforce. If we want it to be a directive where it's just a community-led initiative with some signage, that's fine. But if we're going to put out an ordinance and choose not to enforce it, then I think that's just a waste of everyone's time. So at this point, I'm amenable to what we're looking at right now. And this was something that even when it was going through policy, we sort of knew that it wasn't going to, touch everybody's buttons in the right way. And so I think we're hopefully finding the right compromise right now with it. I did want to make one other comment because we received a comment when we were discussing this at the last meeting about the term electric personal assistive devices. And I just wanted to clarify that that had nothing to do with any kind of mobility equipment. It actually is really the technical name for hoverboards. And so I just wanted to make sure because the city would never, ever put anything in place that was not ADA compliant. So thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Councilmember Seal?
Yes, again, Your Honor, the definition of the downtown area does not include West McKay Street, which I think it needs to. It says East McKay Street, but nothing about West McKay. And again, I would forward my original suggestion that in order to allow e-bikes to ride in the road up Henry Street, maybe we change the thing, instead of just saying the whole of Henry Street, the whole of Lewis Street, the whole of Maple, and the whole of McKay, saying from the center line of those streets. And that way people could ride in one lane anyway, if they wanted to.
Your suggestion is documented, Mr. CEO, and I'm sure that will be discussed by staff and at an upcoming policy subcommittee meeting. Any additional comments or questions? Discussion on the motion. We have a motion on the floor moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by Harmount to acknowledge and to postpone. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 25-136, MERS HCSP. This will be a motion to approve and to update the MERS HCSP Division 301-554 addendum to allow employees to elect to contribute 50% of their full-time payout of sick, vacation, personal, and compensatory time to their HCSP.
Move to approve.
Moved by CO to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Rice. I'll get you on the next one, Mr. Lesh. HR Director, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to comment that I participated in that when I was a city employee here in the city of Saline. I still have funds, a significant amount of funds left, some, I don't know, 11, 12, 14 years after I retired from the city of Saline. It's a wonderful plan, and it's very handy for things like dental appointments and eye appointments that aren't otherwise covered by health insurance that's provided to retirees.
Very good. Would you like to begin? Give a little bit of overview for council's benefit and for the public?
At no cost to the city.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It's a voluntary plan that our employees can join to contribute funds to for the purpose of healthcare expenses after they leave employment with the city, so they can use it anytime, whether they retire or just terminate their employment for any other reason. Like Councilmember CO said, the city is not contributing anything, right? So these payouts that are going to go in there are just this particular individual's payouts that would already otherwise be eligible to be paid out to them. So it's just a nice way for him to take that tax-free benefit and to get some money for healthcare related expenses once he leaves.
Good. Other questions for our HR Director? Let me real quick, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon. Deputy City Manager or City Manager Swallow, any comments you'd like to make regarding this proposal?
I know, I think that Elle's done a great job explaining this, and I just want to reiterate one more time that this is not costing the city any extra dollars or funds in any way whatsoever. So thank you, Elle, for all of your work on it.
Mr. Swallow?
Really just a policy change on the MERS side to make sure that they're eligible. So, and I would definitely support it.
Very good. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, please proceed with any questions you have.
Thank you. So this was brought to us because it's related to one specific employee who's now the only person in a category, correct? This is only for that one person. So does this now open the door? Can other groups choose to do the same thing?
If there's agreement amongst everyone in the group, some groups are larger than others. Some of them were done like at the time of contracts. So this one had like police officers who were hired in a specific time period, right? That kind of thing. So it's like some of them have fewer individuals in them, some of them have more. They've got all admin staff, and once all admin staff came together and agreed that they wanted that, then yes, we could make the change for them.
Okay, and they would all have to agree to the certain dollar amount, and it's then fixed? Is that what it, or the certain percentage rather? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a fixed percentage, yeah. So they all have to agree on that. It could be 100%, 50%, right? That kind of thing. So.
Okay, and does this account survive the employee? In terms of if the employee were to die, does it pass to its heirs or does it revert back to the city?
I think MERS has.
The heirs.
Okay, yeah. I was gonna say,
You can designate a beneficiary.
Staff can confirm that?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Name a beneficiary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and then my only other question is, how does this correlate with a separation agreement? So if you had a separation agreement that said you were entitled to this or you were giving up the right, because these are not actually all things that you would necessarily get upon separating from the city.
Right. I mean, so regardless if it's in a separation agreement, I think if at this point, right, if you have a comp time payout, if it's in a separation agreement, it would still, for the MERS rules, that need to be like 50% of that would need to be contributed to the HCSP as opposed to paid out directly to them.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon. Any additional questions? Any discussion or comment on the motion? We have a motion on the floor then moved by CO, seconded by Rice to approve. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 25-146, MML Liability and Property Pool Renewal 2025. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt and to approve or not to approve the MML Liability and Property Pool Insurance Renewal for a period of 9/1/25 to 8/31/26.
Move to acknowledge and approve.
Moved by Gearbaugh to acknowledge and to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Lesh. This is a pretty standard item that we deal with on an annual basis, but again, for council's benefit and for the public, HR Director Getzman, do you care to make a comment?
Yes, I can speak to MML. There will not be a gap in our service even though we're reviewing this after the first. We've always had a good time working with MML. I have no complaints about that. There is unfortunately a 14% increase in the renewal premium, but that's alleviated by the dividend that we will get back after paying for the premium. Basically, obviously, insurance is increasing kind of across the board, but here at the city, we've had some increased payroll costs that accounted for this, higher appraised property values. And we had 2 new police officers though, which is good news because we're closer to full staffing in that department. We've had some succession planning costs that have driven up the payroll, but again, we're hoping that this kind of stuff will even out. And then the other, we had a couple new vehicles, and I think that pretty much covers everything.
Very good. Let me defer first to the city manager. Anything you'd like to add on this issue?
It's a very standard renewal, so
Mr. Swallow?
Just to say that being part of a pool, this is a statewide pool, that they are able to kind of curb some of those increases. I think if you were in private insurance, you'd see actually larger increases due to what we've seen for property reappraisals, cost of construction, all of those things. So I think it is an advantage to stay with the pool versus going out necessarily to a private insurer.
And I believe are you on the board for the MML? Yeah, okay.
Not biased at all.
Yeah. And I believe you were actually late in your tenure as Tecumseh City Manager. I believe late last week you were at a conference for the MML property and liability pool.
One of the things we are looking at is that reimbursement or the reimbursement of the coming back, the dividends, coming back to the community. So unfortunately, as things get tighter and payouts are increasing, that's something that may not be as high in the future.
Sure. Okay. Thank you for that. Questions for staff, Mr. Gearbaugh, and then Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
I'm just wondering, I know this was brought up, and I think we have a separate policy. It's the cyber liability and data breach. Can you remind me what the policy is amount for that? It's the cyber liability policy. It's not on this policy, but I think we have a separate policy.
we do have a separate cyber liability.
And it's for approximately 5 million or more?
I think that it is 1 million, but it's 1 million.
Yeah, so they do provide up to $100,000 in coverage under the pool, but obviously in today's world, that's often not enough. And
Right, our risk management had made that recommendation.
Increasing that, so it is $1 million.
And just a reminder that there's only $500,000 for dam coverage, so the rest of it would be on the city.
Very good. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. One of the things, the factors were we had an increase in appraised property values, we had 1 new vehicle and 2 new police officers, as you'd mentioned. So do you update them like on a rolling basis if we buy new vehicles, if like our fleet changes, if our staff changes, or is this sort of a all like at the time, like a snapshot?
We try to do it throughout the year as new things pop up, right? I reach out to them, but they do, and as part of the annual renewal process, right, they take like a full accounting of everything that we have, so we send them like a list of all new vehicles, like just in case we missed anything that happens right towards the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
So there is a fairly detailed application that's filled out each year, and obviously it's populated with previous years, and then it's updated annually.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Any additional questions from the dais? Any comments, debate on the motion? We have a motion moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by Lesh to acknowledge and to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Ms. Getzman, thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening. We move on to new business item 25-148, Fire Department recommendation. This is simply a motion to acknowledge receipt of the recommendation from the Fire Task Force.
Move to acknowledge.
Moved by Lesh to acknowledge. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by CO. The Deputy City Manager can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the intent this evening is to provide just a very brief overview on the synopsis and recommendation from the Fire Task Force, which has been meeting over the course of probably the last 4 to 6 weeks. We want to provide ample time for Mr. Swallow to be brought up to speed on the issue and to chime in with any insights that he may have. We'll also hear from Mr. Lesh this evening, who is part of the group as our permanent representative of the Fire Board meeting. I thought that Ms. Champion was going to be present this evening. Perhaps she had a conflict, but I know Council would welcome any insights and perspective that she has if she wanted to convey them via email or attend a future meeting. And then again, Deputy City Manager Cole, correct me if I'm wrong, the intent would be to maybe bring this back as an enumerated discussion item, likely at our first meeting in October, to see if there's consensus to move forward with the working group's recommendation or whether the council would prefer to go in an alternative direction. Okay. Anything else you'd like to add?
We do have the kind of 2 alternatives that we can explore here. And as tonight's only informational, really I want to allow for enough time for questions to come in, not only from council members, but from the public alike. With that being said, we do have room on the 15th, which is only a week away, for a presentation in the agenda. On October 6th, the first meeting in October, we will be reviewing the dam. That will be part of the agenda. It will be a very large item. So my recommendation would be if we could have the presentation on the 15th and maybe just the decision on the 6th. That might be more effective for the meetings overall. But that would mean that questions would have to come to us no later than this Thursday.
Sure. Mr. Lesh, anything you'd like to add as a member of this this working group?
I believe we were eager to try to push the decision as quickly as we could, just because of the decisions that are being made in our neighboring townships anyway. So.
Sure. Can I start with you, Mr. Lesh? Would you be amenable to adding this as a special, it wouldn't be a discussion item, and it wouldn't be an item to be addressed at a work meeting, but to Deputy City Manager Cole's point, do you think there'd be value in having this as a formal presentation at our next regular council meeting?
I think it might be helpful just to do it.
Okay. Is there any objection to that? Would everybody like to proceed with a formal presentation? Everybody's good? Okay. Then I would ask that staff to make sure that that's added as an agenda item. Mr. Lesh, any additional insights, comments at this time?
You got that in your packet. It's a fairly good synopsis. Ms. Champion is actually out of town, otherwise she would have been here tonight. We've read the report many, many times and gleaned information out of it and put it into the matrix. And this is what we came up with, so.
Very good. Okay. Well, we'll look forward to a formal presentation in a week's time. However, I'd be happy to entertain some initial questions or comments if any individuals have them. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, and then I'll jump to Councilmember Harmel.
Thank you. So just to clarify, we're going to have a presentation next Monday, and then we're expected to vote at that meeting?
No, I think,
or is
just a presentation at our next meeting, and then this would appear as an enumerated action item at our, likely under new business at our first meeting in October, which would be the 6th.
Okay, because I want to make sure, kind of following what Deputy City Manager Cole just said, that if we're looking for some public engagement on this, we need to give the public actually time to make sure that they have an opportunity to review the information, whether that's attending the meeting, whether that is having some concise information. And I'll be frank, this presentation isn't it. You can't read the data that's on those sheets. So either they need to have their own reference pages or whatever. And it's just sort of, it's a bit of a clunky format. If you're trying to compare, it would be better as a spreadsheet. So you're looking, apples to apples to be able to see what we're comparing in topics. The other piece to it is that I want to make sure that as we're making decisions, yes, we're making what's best interest of the city, but there are still issues within the fire department that need to be addressed, what the other municipalities' plans are. I don't like the fact that it seems like everything is hinging upon what the city of Saline is doing, when we know that other municipalities have other plans. We're also now seeing that there's a data center that's offering $2 million. And so there's a carrot that's dangling out there that I want to make sure people understand. That rope may be pretty long to be able to reach that carrot. So I just want to make sure that the community understands what we're doing, that we make our decisions in what is in the best interest of the city, long-term, and in the best interest of all of our residents.
If I may,
please.
What we could do is keep the email session open right up until when the packet is due for the October 6th meeting. That would extend, give us a lot of time. We can do kind of two responses. So the presentation next week, any questions that we've gotten or comments we can provide to you, and we can discuss in the presentation. And then following up on the 6th, if we've had more comments come in, we can again summarize those and provide those back to you.
Good. Okay. Councilmember Harmel?
Yes, I really appreciate the approach. The one question that I have is I didn't understand about the points that were allocated. I do understand about the criteria that was set and the weighting, but I didn't understand how the points got allocated. So maybe a little bit more explanation. I sent an email on that.
Thank you. Any additional comments this evening?
No, thank you.
Okay, then please note that this will be a special presentation at the top of the agenda in a week's time, and then an enumerated action item for council to debate and consider at our first meeting in October. There's a motion on the floor moved by Lesh, seconded by CO to acknowledge. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 25-149, FY 25-26 vehicle and equipment replacement fund purchases. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt and to approve or not to approve the purchases of uplifting vehicle 234 plow truck and Vehicle 236 dump chip truck, from Truck and Trailer Specialties Incorporated, and corresponding budget amendments for Vehicle Equipment Revolving Fund for FY26. Is there a motion?
Move to acknowledge and approve.
Moved by CO to acknowledge and to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Lesh. DPW Director Hoppala, floor is yours.
Good evening. Thanks. So yeah, we've got currently our plow truck itemized number 234 within our VERF, and then our dump truck, which also can be utilized as a chip truck, truck number 236. So little history behind these two. We had our chip truck was actually ordered roughly 2 years ago, and given the state and nature of the auto industry, we're seeing variability with those delivery dates. So in understanding that we were seeing this long lag time, the city attempted to be proactive and also place an order for our plow truck, item 234, last fiscal year, and the idea that this would take 2 years to get here. So both of these were documented within our vehicle equipment revolving fund, which is built out to 2031. However, they both arrived at roughly the exact same time. So what we are really doing is a procedural thing to basically reference one item that was budgeted last fiscal year, move it to this fiscal year, and roll another item that's budgeted for next fiscal year into this fiscal year. After both purchases would be made, we would still have a healthy fund balance of $720,000 in case of any type of emergency, anything that we may need to do. So with that plow truck, what this is doing is holding our place in line to get that vehicle upfitted. So we are locking in that price, and so the current plow truck will go through the current winter season, so we are not without that vehicle because the upfitting can take several months. And what we're also doing is taking new purchases that were made, basically vehicle attachments to that vehicle, and Frankensteining them off of that to salvage very new, very useful parts and put them in conjunction with the upfitting for the truck, saving us a substantial amount of money. So what you can look for is likely once that upfitting is complete, which I would anticipate being around this time next year, you'll see some type of disposal of that asset and what we're looking at for it. Again, the resale value on one of these pieces of equipment, they're very large. They don't really equate to any type of commercial use given their tonnage. So there's not a whole lot of value in them. Hence why we're salvaging the parts off of it as much as we can instead of just trying to resell that with all the gadgets on it and get as much bang for our buck. The resale value just isn't there. So again, all we're looking for tonight is basically a budget amendment for that plow truck. Again, we had that purchase order placed last fiscal year. We just now need the funds basically rolled over into this fiscal year, and then getting purchase orders in place for the upfitting for both the 234 and the 236.
Good. Questions for our DPW director? Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
Thank you. And I'm not going to make you repeat anything about the trucks. Actually, all I wanted to know is about the Maverick that we're buying. And so that's going to be used exclusively for the building department? Is that out of your scope?
Exclusively for the building department. So we have not gotten to that yet. I think that is something that we're looking to review is the VERF in its totality. So currently, all we have budgeted this fiscal year is $44,000. That is for a post hole auger, some different attachments, and that vehicle, the 4x4, I believe is budgeted for a future fiscal year. It may even be next fiscal year.
Okay.
So I can get back to you on that question.
It's on this memo, and I guess I'm just trying to understand.
Oh, from November of 2024?
So did you already buy that Maverick? Like, this memo is dated November of 24.
So I have to go back and look. I think that we only purchased one Maverick. That Maverick is here, it's out and I think that we're authorized to purchase two, but we wanted to evaluate how the Maverick was working out for the city for a year.
Yeah.
So I think that's why we had decided to hold on the other purchase of the Maverick to evaluate if it was a good vehicle. And I think we're coming up on that year mark very soon.
Yes, and that attachment, now I understand what you were referencing to. So that attachment was that previous memo approving the purchase order of both vehicles. So now this is just, again, this is nothing new we're bringing to you guys. It's just procedurally making sure we're moving the funds into the correct fiscal years. So that memo attachment from November 2024, a lot of those things have been completed, but that document did show the actual plow truck, the 2026 plow truck, as well as the chassis for the chip truck. So that upfitting the 48,000, which we were not able to complete given its delivery date.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Any discussion on the motion? We refer back to the previous page. It's been moved by CO, seconded by Lesh to acknowledge and to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Director Hoplow. We appreciate your work. Let me start to my right and end to my left. We're moving on to the discussion portion of tonight's agenda. Reports and other announcements, including updates from boards, committees, commissions, or task forces. Mr. Lesh.
It's not really an arts and culture project, but I just want to make the community aware that the Leather Bucket Alley is being painted. So if people are interested in participating, please go down and check it out.
Yeah, I think one of our colleagues, Ms. Dillon, I think you were painting at some point. Was it today or this weekend? Yesterday, okay.
Yesterday, I was out there.
How'd it go?
Very well. It's literally paint by numbers, so I encourage anybody to do it.
Okay.
They've drawn it out. There's literally numbers. They give you the paint that corresponds to it. It's easy peasy and fun.
Because I have no artistic skills, so it would have to be really easy for me not to make a mess of things. Mr. CO?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Actually, no, I don't have anything.
Councilmember Gearbaugh?
Just on Wednesday, we'll be meeting to discuss the site plan again for Ridgewater on the corner of North Ann Arbor Street and Waterworks.
Councilmember Rice?
Believe it or not, interviews for youth council are tomorrow. I'm so excited that youth council is starting back up again. 'Tis the season.
Very good. Councilmember Harmo?
We have a Historic District Commission meeting on Thursday.
Okay. Excellent. Because Mr. Swallow passed these out this evening, it got me thinking. I think Councilmember Rice made a comment of this. Because the URLs for all staff members and council members changed, most business cards, I'm assuming for my council colleagues, are antiquated. Who is taking the lead on ordering new business cards?
So Kathy Korfman is the one that's in charge of ordering business cards.
Okay.
I would recommend that we get an update from the communications department on how they're proceeding with the communications strategy and rebranding and see how they're coming along.
Okay.
So if we could get back with you at the next meeting or maybe in the Friday update,
It's fine.
let you know kind of where we stand before we order more cards.
Okay. Very good. Deputy City Manager Cole, do you want to give a very brief update because we'll bring it back as a discussion item? Do you want to speak to the Bixby Marionette Trust? We had a recent meeting, you and I, with I guess the chair and maybe the co-chair or a key member rather of the Bixby Steering Committee. It looks like we have sort of a consensus and a direction to move forward.
We do. Luckily, it was a great meeting with the family. They've redirected their thought process on the Bixby Marionettes, and while their plan was to originally keep them together, they now are going to look at distributing them nationwide. With that, the city of Saline obviously can't continue to be the owners of the puppets, so they have agreed to break the trust, and we are working with the attorneys right now to see how exactly that's going to proceed.
Yep. So that'll be brought back as an enumerated action item at an upcoming meeting. Not going to guarantee when, but sometime in the not too distant future. And then the one caveat that will need to be considered and discussed is once the trust is dissolved, there still needs to be, at least for a finite period of time, allowance for items to remain in the basement. And I think there's also the long-term goal, while much of the two-dimensional items, the marionettes, and the three-dimensional props will be disseminated to museums and facilities throughout the United States, there is still a desire to maintain a presence in the Saline community, specifically in the Board of Education room at Liberty School, and of course a much larger, nicer display at the Saline District Library. Very good. And then last item, I had requested this at our special meeting last Tuesday. I'm not sure if you have any update, Deputy City Manager Cole or City Manager Swallow. We have not had an opportunity to discuss this item yet. There is a proposed data center in Saline Township near the intersection of Michigan Ave and Brown Road, not that close, but close to the corporate limits of the city of Saline. I know that the Township Board of Trustees and the Planning Commission are working through that issue presently. I'm not against data centers. I've had the opportunity to tour data centers, talk to community stakeholders directly impacted by data centers, as well as utility companies and economic development specialists. But data centers do have a pretty significant impact on utilities. I would cite as a specific example water. And so I don't know if we have any insight on what sort of ramifications that proposed data center would have, broadly speaking, on the Saline community. But if we thought it posed the potential to have a negative impact on our citizens or businesses, I wanted to make sure that this council or city were to chime in and communicate that to our peers in Saline Township.
Mayor, I can reassure you that staff is watching the data center very closely. And while the data centers can have impact on utilities, they are not far enough along in the process to kind of understand the holistic impact to the community at this time. Further, the city of Saline itself has not been approached by a data center to my knowledge, and we are not in the process at any point, or will be, where we are considering a data center. We simply don't have the room within the city.
Sure. Okay. Very good. Comments? Let me start with Councilmember Rice and then jump to Mr. Gearbaugh.
I'm wondering if another group that I belong to had a call on Saturday where the Washtenaw County Water Resources Manager, Gretchen Driscoll, former mayor of Saline, chimed in. I don't know what the outcome of that was, but I wonder if we could get some information from her, if her staff has any information about water resources throughout Washtenaw County and what they're looking at when it comes to these data centers.
Thank you. Councilmember Gearbaugh.
I just want to make sure we're not having any kind of discussions or providing assurances on something of extending our utilities or working with another outside water agency that we might become part of this. As we know, there's a lot of plus and minus with these data centers, and there's significant pushback at this point by a number of individuals. So we can't be promising something that we may not be able to deliver.
Any additional comments or questions? Okay. We'll look forward to having staff report back when it's appropriate to do so. Thank you very much. We come now to the second public comment period. Under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time, make comment to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Those wishing to speak are requested but not required to state their name and addresses for the record. Please note that generally Council does not respond to questions during the second public comment period. Are there any public comments this evening?
Trent Longmore, 325 North Low Street. Two things. One, on the data center. Technically, Saline Township could make a decision on rezoning this week, which would advance things pretty. These guys want to move fast. Digital, whatever. If you guys want to get your word in, it might be good to get that quick. But my sense is they want nothing to do with it. And you would rather not dip their toes in this thing at all. But they're going to have to eventually. And on the bike ordinance, e-bike ordinance, I'm really not sure why we need an e-bike ordinance and a bike ordinance. I'm not sure why we need to classify all these different versions of e-bikes. If you need a sidewalk speed limit, really easy. You might never enforce it, but at least it's easy and everyone could understand it. And there's no reason why Michigan Avenue or Northern Harbor Street needs have sidewalks that are better for, safer for e-bikes than somebody who lives in Wildwood. Nobody wants someone walking their baby carriage on the sidewalk doesn't want to get the same kind of issue. I doubt they would. But to me, it's just a speed limit issue, and I think it could be handled easily. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Longmore. Appreciate your comments. Additional citizen comments. You can speak to any issue that you're so inclined to speak to. But you will be limited to 3 minutes.
Thanks for looking into postponing and getting more information on the e-bike and bicycle in general. So thanks for that. As far as some of the asset management, I think the dam was brought up quite a few times, that should really be in two categories. It should be the community enhancement because it creates the mill pond, it creates Mill Pond Park. So you need to look at that the dam is really having dual roles in the city, and it should be primarily community enhancement because it's part of our premier park. Also, the dam is considered by Eagle in fair condition, which is a good, like a B rating. And your illustration in tonight's asset management puts that at 75%. So you really should be encouraged to maintain something that's at a position of 75% rather than spending probably 10 million plus to remove it. So, and the other, some of the other elements on the general city's assets are probably the best city manager you had for that was Larry Stouffer. He went through, he was an infrastructure man, hopefully your new replacement is as well. But when I started, all the original 1913 water main was in place, and when I left, the only bit that's left is North Ann Arbor Street, just north of Michigan Ave, and it goes down to what we call Pump House Lane to the well field. So really, in the 90s, the city did an excellent job of maintaining the city. It wasn't really till Todd Campbell came, and the 08, 09, the brakes got put on everything, and unfortunately, Todd Campbell was comfortable with the brakes being put on, and you guys are now just recovering from that. But prior to that, things were very good, and I can tell Nicole Rice that I know exactly where your curb box is because in 1991 we've removed the 2-foot lead gooseneck for 303 North Ann Arbor, and your curb stop is right next to the house on the corner. The two are within 2 feet of each other. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Grossman. Appreciate it. Any additional citizen comments? I'll defer to the clerk. Any written comments provided in advance of tonight's meeting which the individual wanted their remarks read at this time? If there's nothing further to be brought before City Council this evening, the chair would be delighted to entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:27. Moved by Gearboss, seconded by Dillon. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned. See you in 1 week's time.